Hi, my name is Priyanka Paul, and I am an illustrator and a poet. I didn't draw this, my friend Tara Anand did. I'm known on Instagram as Art Whoring. That's what I call my brand. And mostly my work revolves around themes of social justice and self-exploration. So what I do with my work is I touch upon topics like feminism, caste, religion, all of that. I talk about LGBTQ rights, everything under the sun, sex positivity, body positivity. And mostly, this is some of my work. That's something I made for Malala. This is something I made for a LGBTQ organization in India. This is something I talk about, this is talking about caste in Kerala, because I'm from Kerala, and I come from this community called the Erava Thia community, and we've been victim to a lot of caste injustice, and this is my way of expressing it. Yeah, so my work has always had an air of criticism to it, and I'm a great believer that art is the greatest form of protest. And that's why it's important to be angry and protest through art, because, you know, art changes culture, culture changes people, and people change the world. This is again some of my work. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Bedx. And what I believe is that artists haven't always been change makers, they've been change bringers. What they do is tell you that, look, there's a problem here, do something about it. But in that way, Bedx is important to me because it was the first time that I didn't do something which was like, look at this, it's wrong, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Bedx to me was something where I told you that this was wrong, this is bad, this is a problem, and this is how you could possibly change it. It was, for the first time, something that was not a direct attack at an establishment. It was something where I told people that you could change something, you could do something with it, and personally, that wasn't what I've done. I've always been very violent and aggressive with my artwork. And so what Bedx does is bring art and design together. Art has always meant to make you feel something. Design has always been there to solve a problem, and I feel Bedx does that in its own ways. So what is Bedx? Bedx is an independent guide zine for men. I worked on this with a friend and fellow designer, Rushil Bhatnagar. And through Bedx, we talk about sex in a comfortable, fun way. It's inspired by Bollywood hugely. And it's targeted towards men. And we're talking to people in the language that they know. We made this for people our age. I'm 20 years old. And we want to talk to young people about sex in a way that's not full of taboo. But before Bedx, I want to talk to you about zines. Let's go back to 9th standard, where the 11th chapter in your science biology textbooks was reproduction. And we were so excited about that topic because that was the only sex education related thing that you had in your 10 years of schooling education. And personally, we'd be so shocked by the fact that this had words like breasts and penis and vagina, because we were extremely shocked that a government-sanctioned textbook could have words like this. Like, does the government know? Like, people are having sex? Unbelievable. But yeah, exactly. And personally, in my school, when they taught us this chapter, I went to a co-ed school, so they divided us into boys and girls in different classrooms and taught us this subject, this chapter. Which is funny because that's not how sex works. Like, I'd love for people to go into separate rooms and boom, sex, ho gaya. But that's not how this happens. So, I mean, this is inherently such a flawed concept, right? This causes gender divide, and it's not leading to productive conversations. For sex to be understood well, you need to be having conversations that happen in these healthy, productive spaces like classrooms, which are facilitated by mentors like teachers or your parents. And you need to be having this conversation with people, with peers, with people of different genders. So, I mean, at an early age, your parents don't really teach you that, and that's already flawed. Then you hope that you go to an institution like school, and you hope they give you this essential education, but they fail there as well. And the education system is so flawed because even when I'm talking about this chapter, this reproduction chapter, it's in a biology textbook. It's one chapter. And because they're teaching you about bodies in that, it's a scientific chapter. And sex isn't always fully about bodies. It's about cultural context. It's about stigma. It's about so many things that you need to be understand, which is why it needs to be an actual full subject in its own. Like, there are more people in a classroom who are going to grow up to be adults who have sex than people who are going to have stable careers. So why is sex not everywhere? sex education, even in schools, like I went to an SSC school, so for me, sex education would probably be a luxury. I never got it. But I believe in schools with international curriculum, they do have sex ed, but even there, it's really negligible in quality. We've been brought up into a culture where sex is taboo. We all know that. Our textbooks are boring and mechanical, and they show us diagrams which are, again, very boring. And honestly, you don't want to learn about sex from a teacher with a straight face who hasn't had sex in 10 years. Which is why I want to pitch to you the idea of zines. I want to talk to you about zines. So zines comes from like magazine, and it's small independent booklets that artists, archaeologists, doctors, anybody can make. What it is an alternative form of education, and it's an underground publishing scene. So it comes from a whole rebel idea that you don't want a government-sanctioned textbook, so you make your own book. And I think it's a wonderful idea because it gives everyone the freedom to express who they are. It's an alternative to conventional textbooks. It's a very niche medium to be using, especially in a country like India. But what I believe is that it gives an individual or a collective a voice that if you need to be heard, you can publish on your own. And sometimes it's sad that the establishment is not pro these voices when it should be. So, and I personally believe that in my high school, where if all of the children were given a comic book about sex education, they'd grow up to be much more happier, much more wiser, much more well-equipped in life as individuals. That's what I have an important thing to say is that we're not teaching kids the right things, firstly, and we need to completely rethink what we're teaching them, and more importantly, how we're teaching them. We've forgotten how to have fun with education, and that honestly sucks. So yeah, that's the interesting story about Bedx talks was that I'd just given my first TEDx talk in Pune, and I was chilling with a friend, Rushil, and he's really passionate about writing Facebook statuses. So he came up with UNESCO has declared cuddling to be known as Bedx talks, and that just stuck. Because later when we wanted to make a zine and we wanted to talk about sex and add Bollywood to it, that was the name that clicked, and that's just what we did. Now, why men? And why should I, as a woman, be talking about male sex or male bodies? What do I know about that? I'm not an authority on it. I don't claim to be. But what I'd importantly say is that, with the internet and with the feminist movement gaining a lot of support over the years, there came to be a lot of online internet collectives, feminist collectives that started producing a lot of content about women, women's lives, women's sexuality. And I'm so greatly indebted to them because it led to such a greater understanding of myself, my sexuality. But I really want to ask you this question. Is that how many media outlets or online portals do you see that are targeted towards Indian male, talking about their sexuality, and in a very free, safe way? That isn't done. Like the only thing I can think of is Men's XP, and that's absolute garbage because they post articles like 10 things to not tell your mother-in-law. I mean, honestly, I don't think anyone needs that. There's no specific content that's tailor-made for Indian men, which is surprising because Indian men have different bodies, they have different cultural contexts, different sexual experiences from those that if American sex portals are talking about, Indian men cannot really connect with that. So why aren't we making any sex guide for men? Like the only thing when you say sex guide in India, men comes to mind is Kama Sutra, and that's just really ancient right now. So men are everywhere, but then men are everywhere. They're in dominating positions in every field. They have power, but they're not having these important conversations because no one has taught them to. I mean, I come from a family where my mother's a doctor, and I'm a woman, and I've had one sex talk where my mother, again, opened an encyclopedia and showed me a uterus and a vagina, and that was my sex talk. And I can totally imagine how an average Indian male has never had this conversation with his parents, or with his peers, or in schools, because we've denied this accessibility. And which is why porn has always been a starting point for sexual experiences, and porn is unrealistic. And defining your sexual experiences by porn being a starting point is already problematic. Which is why what we wanted to do with Bedx was we crowdsourced knowledge. We spoke to the men in our lives. We did research and we did surveys. We wanted to know, what they don't, what pains them, what they want to say but they can't. I spoke to a lot of people I have a huge Instagram audience, so I spoke to a lot of men there. I always knew about the fact that intercourse is painful as a woman. But is it painful for men? And I found out that it was. And there were such easy solutions to this that men widely didn't know about. And these were easy things. Nothing in Bedx is purely expert advice. It's just research, verified, testified, experiences turned into a learning resource. It's storytelling to me. So what I wanted to particularly emphasize with that video was that we use a lot of Bollywood. The references a lot of Bollywood in them because we believe that Bollywood is such an important part in our Indian lives. It's such an important visual aid. So we gave it a lot of Bollywood visual identity. And because I'm a strong believer in using a narrative that has been used to give out a wrong message and turn that around and completely do something different with it. So Bollywood has always been incredibly sexist, misogynist. It shows a stereotypical idea of what masculinity it is. It jokes about trans people, gay people. And I took that around, and I think what we did is we gave it a new narrative, and we redefined masculinity in our own way. Because I feel like that as artists, that's our responsibility. So the topics that Bedx talks about, again, it goes from talking about how to wash your foreskin, to how to talk to women, about lubrication, about how gay sex happens, and everything that we could find that we could fit into 32 pages. This is some of the stuff that's in the book. We wanted to just talk to people our age in our language that they understood, which was not a textbook, which made them want to actually read it. So during Me Too, I had, because I was very active on social media, I had to read a lot of men saying things like, how is this assault? How am I supposed to know? There was an acquaintance of mine who got called out, and he was called out for the fact that he wouldn't use protection with women because he claimed his penis was too big, which is funny because you can fit a whole leg into a condom. All my life, I've known men who make fun of gay people. And it's easy to make fun of things you don't know anything about, right? Because all of these experiences are shaped by ignorance and just not knowing better. Men are not taught about their own consent, let alone someone else's. We've not emphasized that sex is supposed to be a healthy, communicative experience. But we've always cemented these flawed ideas of sex that we get from porn and mainstream media that more than often have violent imagery in them. We've taught women to be victims and men to not be accountable. We've created a culture that lacks empathy and understanding, and that won't change unless we do something about it now. The elephant in the room, if you haven't guessed by now, is sex. And we've ignored this elephant for too long, and well, now it's on a rampage. So I want to tell you that you need to be talking to young people. You need to be talking to them in your houses, in your schools, in your colleges, in your counseling, in your peer groups, everywhere, because young people are having sex whether you like it or not. And I mean, this is not a gender problem, or a feminist problem, or a male problem, or a me problem. It's an us problem. And I think it's time we took notice. Thank you.